Hi, this is my review of the Era de Consortium Definitive Edition Rulebook. This is a collector's edition or an expanded version of the core rulebook of Era de Consortium. This contains over 100 pages of additional material. You have new details on sections of the timeline. You have history on the implants. You have new equipment, new ships. You also have new locations. There's a lot of new stuff. So with this review, I'm going to try and help you decide if it's worth getting this definitive edition. Maybe you haven't played the Era de Consortium RPG yet, and you're trying to decide if you should get the normal rulebook or the definitive edition. Or maybe you already own the core rulebook and you want to know if it's worth it to get the definitive edition. Let's talk about the quality of the PDF. Everything is well organized, written and explained. And I want to say thank you to Radek G, who pointed out some errors and typos. They have already been fixed. So everything looks great. The graphic design is also good, like all of the other Era de Consortium books. The illustrations also look awesome and thematic. It doesn't have bookmarks, but you do have hyperlinks in the table of contents. And Ed Jowett of Shades of Vengeance also told me that they are going to be adding bookmarks to the Shades of Vengeance different RPG books, so that's great. Let's talk about the contents of the PDF. If you haven't seen my review of the Era de Consortium Core Rulebook, I'm going to put a link in the description below so you can check it out, because in this review I'm going to focus on the changes between the definitive edition and the core rulebook. So let's start by talking about the details when it comes to the history and the sections of the timeline. Take a look at this page. As you can see, you have a timeline, a layout of the events that happened in the history of Era de Consortium. The core rulebook, that is the non-definitive edition core rulebook, goes into a lot of detail, but in other sections of the timeline. And here they just give you like a framework or some points that you can develop as a game master when you are designing a campaign or running some adventures around a particular event. But with the definitive edition, they really go into further detail in each of those points. So many of these years, and even some years in between, get special treatment. And I'm not talking just about one paragraph or two. I'm talking about one page or two for each of those events. So you will see how the companies start to clash with the Senate little by little, very subtly at first. After salvaging important materials from the Kurmaja, the companies realize that the Senate is going to be sometimes an obstacle when they are trying to run things. You will also see many different everyday life type of moments that do not have an important political, social, or economical impact on the setting, but it's nice that they are there so that you can have an example of the types of simple joys that the characters experience as they try to carry on with their business. You will see the fate of Captain Rogers. It's a tragic figure, how he faces all sorts of problems as he was removed from power. He's trying to move on, handling a mining conglomerate, but he has run into ecological problems regarding his activities. You will also see how the Big Seven started to have these secret meetings to replace the Senate. You will see the clashes between the Senate's security force and the shady activities of the companies. Many setups, many backstabbings, many secret agendas as the Senate starts to lose power and the different companies start to take over. Another thing that I like, for those of you that want to explore the earliest part of the timeline, is that you can see how the Senate was at first formed by many minor companies. So if you want to have like an adventure where you're trying to find your place in the Senate, trying to promote your services and your products, it will be quite easy for you to build an adventure or an entire campaign around that. You will see many projects, many power plays, trying to take control over colonization projects. You will see the development of new technologies and the long-term cost of investing on those technologies. You will see both open and secret conflicts. You will see how competition quickly escalates into all-out war. You will see how religion is used to accomplish certain economical goals. You will see how different representatives from different organizations carry out their plans right under the noses of the public, disguising everything through the media and through other more unsavory tactics. You will see how markets rise and fall, and how someone with an eye for opportunity could appear as a savior of the market with an ulterior economic motive. You will see the takeover of different companies, how the press is manipulated to handle opinions against different people and organizations. You will see how the big 7 companies carry out negotiations with the Senate to the point that they completely override the Senate. You will see how freedom and liberties are taken from the people and given back to the people at the whim and convenience of the Big 7. You will have more details on the colonization of Nodens, the deaths of different important characters in the setting. You will see new players stepping into the field, some of them looking for stability, some others driven by their own greed. You will see the formation of the free colonies as a response of the maneuvering of the Big 7. There is information on the changes concerning the free market, piracy, and the declaration of the Outsystem Combine. There are different moments of prosperity, of conflict, of exploration. Those are the main big changes when it comes to the storyline and the timeline in general when comparing the definitive edition to the core rulebook. As you can see, there is a lot of additional material. I didn't go into much detail when it comes to each segment of the timeline, but you have enough to design an entire campaign around a particular section of the timeline because of the effectiveness of the book at communicating the culture, the political outlook, the economical changes and challenges. It's all there for you to use as building blocks in any sort of adventure that you want to carry out. Now let's talk about some of the new locations that you will find in this definitive edition core book. Each of these locations and planets have many details when it comes to, for example, the atmospheric composition, the colonization date, the mean orbital radius, population, tech level, law level, crime level, etc. There are a lot of details of important information that you can use during your adventures to flesh out those plots, those mysteries, and those intrigues and plans. Those considerations could be related to some things that the non-player characters are scheming, or something that your own players have come up with during the course of a particular mission. So first we have Robor. Although Robor has not been officially colonized, it does have the infrastructure to be populated. During the time of sorrow, the Simians were used as slave labor to build luxury housing here. However, the Senate has, for 250 years, refused to decide who should be allowed to own these structures. And then we have Anko. Anko is a planet aptly named for the Celtic god of death. No expedition that has landed on its surface has ever returned. And then we have Rosmerta. Rosmerta was always too close to Solis to be worth colonization. The costs outweighed the benefits when there were other planets and moons to choose from. This became even more the case when the wormhole to Damara was discovered. Then we have Sucellos. The region of space around Sucellos has been known as one of the most hazardous in the Consortium ever since the 1st century CE. when Smertio Security destroyed many of the gas giant's moons. This attempt to stamp out the OutSystem Combine's piracy failed, but left much of the region filled with fast-moving debris. And then we have Anaxiomarus. Several of the moons of Anaxiomarus met a similar fate to those of Socelos during the 1st century of the Consortium, destroyed to prevent pirate bases being built here. However, due to the mineral wealth available and the difficulty navigating the remains of the blasted moons, the mining conglomerate persuaded Smertio Security to cease their assault partway through. Then we have Andastre. Andastre is the largest gas giant in the Consortium. The region of space nearby is generally considered to be owned by the Eleutians, despite the fact that Clota, the world owned by Open Technology, is also in orbit. Then we have Borvo. The region near Borvo is a strange place, avoided by a lot of the deep space pilots of the Consortium. Most of the moons lie unmined, while the Big Seven claim that this is due to fluctuations in the gravitational fields in the area, making it dangerous to get too close. Others have some very different explanations. Stories may vary. Then we have Lavonus. Lavonus is very close to Borvo, but it is generally considered by the more superstitious that the slightly larger twin acts as a shield from the evils of that surrounding Borvo. It is said that as long as you stay on the side of Lavonus that's furthest from Borvo, you will be safe enough from the strange happenings. Then we have Vicious. The region of space around Vicious has a large number of moons, many of which hold OutSystem Combine bases within. Unfortunately, there is currently a war being waged between different pirate factions for control of the territory. We also have some high-technology stations, such as IOB. Originally a modified Hardcastle haulage trading point station, it was purchased during its initial construction and modified by Smertio Security to carry weapons as a response to the discovery of the wormhole from Solis. We also have Britannia. CNC Colonization and Construction built Britannia as a base for their zero-gravity construction operations in the early years of the company's existence. Then we have Saritven. Saritven is a small research post, originally constructed by Open Technology on the outskirts of Damara, to investigate both of the discovered wormhole phenomena and to research other methods to manipulate them for the Consortium's use. We have details on Gateway 1, which was the first attempt by the Resistance to create a safe control location where civilians who did not want to live under Consortium rule would go. We also have Gateway 2. It was the newly commissioned Katana unit, led by Ixitanka, who secured the ship which would come to be known as Gateway 2, a Smertio Security prison ship. We also have information on the OutSystem Combined bases, some trading posts, and so forth. And when it comes to the history of the implants, they handle it somewhat similarly to the details, to the extra information in the timeline of the Consortium. So for example, instead of just having first generation allow memory imprints and a basic preset function, it tells you who developed these implants and with what purpose or hope. Or maybe they give you details about the third generation of implants, that they allow detection of vital signs and activation of implants, but they also tell you at which point of the bug war these implants were developed and what famous characters use these implants. And instead of just informing you of the miniaturization of holographic technology linked to the 5th generation power source, they tell you who advertised this progress and the breakthroughs in holographic communications that happened. And you have a few additional things when it comes to the gear and vehicles. Some notable examples would be the Smertio's Security Fighter Mk3, with the usual information of the ship size, the armor, shields, types of offensive weapons. This fighter was specially designed to be carried by the Orion II Alviorix. The design incorporated lighter armor and weaponry than previous models in favor of lower power consumption. They give you the technical details of the gateways 1 and 2 that I was talking about a few minutes ago, giving you information on the structure points, the shield, the defensive weapons, speed, minimum pilot skill, etc. So what do I think of Era the Consortium Definitive Edition? I think this book is a better choice if you haven't played Era the Consortium yet, and if you're deciding if you want to get this one or the core rulebook. I think this is worth getting instead of the core rulebook because it presents a better introduction on how to play Era the Consortium, the RPG, especially if you have plans on playing the time travel campaign. There's also a lot of material supporting that. And the additional 100 pages make it worth the purchase overall. But I think the real question would be, what if somebody already owns the normal core rulebook? Is this definitive edition worth getting? There are certain points in favor. It's more expensive than the normal core book, but the things that will help you decide if you want to purchase this book in addition to the normal core book would be that you get a lot of adventure and campaign seeds as they detail each section of the timeline. There is a lot of material here to use for that. I just gave you a few examples. There are a couple of pages during each section that could last you for an entire campaign if you really dig into it. Maybe your campaign could cover 3 or 4 years within the setting, and this book will support that. When it comes to the locations and planets and stations, they also serve as adventure sites. They go into great detail when it comes to the essentials of that planet or that station. So, for example, if you were to use Era the Consortium in its normal state, you'll be able to build many intrigues and plot lines around the situation of a particular planet, be it related to scientific research, exploration, even horror. If you, for example, have the horror expansion of Era the Consortium, and I already reviewed that one, I'm going to put a link in the description below. You could use the horror expansion to explore some rumors or enigmas of the different planets. So it further enhances what Era the Consortium is all about, which is basically a catch-all rich sci-fi setting that you can play as a game of espionage, that you can play as a game of negotiations and political intrigue. You could also play it as sort of like warfare. You could be mercenaries, you could be transporters, you could be anything that you can imagine. You could be a pizza delivery boy in this world. You do even have like a vehicle specialized for that. So this definitive edition really brings out the flavor of Era the Consortium. And when it comes to the history of the implants, that's also going to be great for the time travel campaign. Many of you that have watched my review of the time travel campaign already know there is a point where the implants, the development of implants, become a vital consideration when it comes to the course or the future development of the campaign. I also like it that they included a few more ships and stations, because you never know what the characters are going to attempt, and they're always looking for the right tool for the right job. So all things considered, if you find those things enticing or appealing, I think it's worth getting this definitive edition in addition to the normal core book. You could also decide to get this one as a PDF or as a physical book. Maybe if that's something that is bothering you, maybe you have the PDF of the core book and you're thinking, oh, I want to get the physical book. You should get the physical book of the definitive edition, or vice versa. Maybe you have the physical book of the physical copy of the core book. You could get the PDF of the definitive edition. So all things considered, I highly recommend the definitive edition. If you are just getting into the Consortium, get it without a doubt. If you are a collector or a completionist, you could also get it, considering that I think that the graphic layout overall is a bit more clean, slightly better, because they took more advantage of the spacing and the graphics and the illustration, so it looks a bit more pretty. And if you have the core rulebook, I think it would all depend also if you like to homebrew your own stuff. Maybe you could be thinking, oh, I don't need the history of the implants, or I don't need the additional pages of the timeline. I can come up with my own information and such. Maybe you will be skipping out this definitive edition. But if you're someone who wants to get into the flavor of the creation of Era the Consortium as an entire setting of many opportunities to explore planets, to develop technologies, and to carry out some business deals, I think the definitive edition in that regard will not disappoint you. Well, thanks for watching my review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. See you later.